Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're tackling a topic that really touches almost everyone with a smartphone these days, mobile learning.
That's right. We've got this collection of academic papers, research studies,
Hmm.
really looking at mobile learning from a bunch of different angles.
And our mission, really, for this deep dive is to unpack all that for you. We want to pull out the key insights, figure out what the research actually says mobile learning is.
How it works, in the real world, where it's being used, and maybe most importantly, what the big challenges and opportunities are.
Because, look, whether you're trying to maybe learn something on your commute or you're an educator thinking about using tech differently.
Or even if you're just curious about how these devices, the ones in our pockets, are changing how we learn stuff.
Exactly. This deep dive into the source material is for you. So let's jump right in.
Okay, so first things first. The sources tried to pin down what we even mean by mobile learning. What is it?
It's more than just like e-learning on a tiny screen.
Right. Totally. I mean, the ticket gets blurry, obviously, but the sources really emphasize these core characteristics. Mobile learning is, well, personal. It's often spontaneous.
Opportunistic, like grabbing a moment when you can.
Exactly. Grab that moment. It can be informal. It's pervasive. It's situated, like, right where you happen to be. Often private, context-aware, bite-sized.
And obviously portable, that's the key bit.
Right. Compare that to, traditional e-learning that's often described more like structured, maybe media-rich, needing broadband.
Interactive, sure, maybe intelligent, usable, but usually stuck in one place. Tethered.
And here's a really interesting point the sources bring up early on. Most mobile devices, phones, tablets,
Mhm.
they weren't actually designed for education first.
Oh, right. They were for business or retail or just entertainment.
Exactly. So the sources argue that educational use has often been almost parasitic. It's like a secondary thing layered on top of the device's main purpose.
Wow, okay. That has to fundamentally change how you think about it, doesn't it? The tool wasn't built for the job you're trying to do.
It absolutely shapes it, the possibilities, the limitations, and to help make sense of all these moving parts, the research introduces this really useful framework. It's called the frame model.
Perry model, framework for the rational analysis of mobile education. Got it.
Yes. And the core idea is that effective mobile learning isn't just about the cool gadget. It happens where three things meet: device usability, the learner aspect, and social interaction.
So it's the process that emerges when those three things integrate properly?
Precisely.
Okay, let's break that down. First part, device usability. What are the sources saying about the actual devices?
Well, it's kind of two things. There's the physical stuff,
Yeah,
size, weight, how it feels, and then the technical side, the processor speed, input-output methods, connectivity, battery life, screen.
and it's not just the tech specs on a sheet, is it? The sources say these things directly impact how comfortable someone feels using it for learning. Physically comfortable, but also psychologically.
Right. The device is literally the interface. It's between the learner and whatever they're trying to learn or
Oh.
do.
Makes sense. And connectivity seems huge here.
Oh, absolutely crucial. The sources mention all sorts of Wi-Fi, obviously, but also older stuff like infrared, Bluetooth for short range, and then the mobile networks, GSM, CDMA, to get you onto the wider internet.
And the studies, especially the earlier ones, really showed how these device limits were major roadblocks.
Definitely. You see the same issues pop up again and again, small screens making it hard to see complex graphics or, detailed illustrations. That came up in distance ed studies.
Right, trying to squint at something designed for a desktop.
Exactly. And wireless connectivity,
Yeah.
often flaky or just too expensive. One study mentioned GPRS issues that's that older, sometimes really slow mobile data,
Hmm.
made consistent access hard. Another one had trouble just getting devices connected reliably during teacher training.
I remember the museum study, too. People needed headphones just to hear the audio guide properly.
Yeah, sometimes you need those extra bits, the peripherals, to make it work in that specific context. And just designing content for these tiny screens, it forces you to think differently. Maybe use audio or video instead of loads of text like one distance learning study explored.
The sources do give a bit of hope, though. They mention that while some early projects used, like, really expensive gear,
Yeah, PDAs and things.
the cost of phones and storage is dropping fast now, and coverage is getting better.
Which does suggest that, pretty powerful handsets will likely become much more widely available. That lowers a big barrier, at least the device cost barrier.
Okay, so that's the device piece. But a device is just an object without someone using it. So that brings us to the second part of frame, the learner aspect.
Right. This is all about the individual. Their cognitive abilities, memory, what they already know, prior knowledge is huge. how they feel about the task, their motivation, how willing they are to even try new tech.
And their environment matters too, right? And whether the task feels authentic, how the information is presented, that all shapes how they learn on that device.
And this is where the sources connect mobile learning to some really key learning theories. Helps us understand why it can work when it's done well.
Like constructivism.
Yeah, that's a big one. The idea that we don't just absorb knowledge, we actively build it, construct it, often socially, by negotiating meaning. Mobile devices, especially used out in the world or collaboratively, are kind of perfect tools for that.
And there is that interesting bit about different kinds of memory.
Oh, right. Episodic versus semantic memory. Semantic is like knowing facts and concepts, the definition of photosynthesis.
Okay.
Episodic is tied to experiences remembering being somewhere, doing something. Mobile learning, because it's portable, lets you tap into that powerful episodic memory. Imagine looking up info while you're standing at a historical site or dealing with a patient case.
Ah, so you remember the context, the use of the information.
Exactly. And remembering the use makes it stick better and easier to apply later. Really powerful.
What else? Dual coding theory.
Yep. Simple idea, really. Presenting stuff in different ways, visuals and audio, for instance. Our brains process through different channels. Mobile devices with multimedia are great for this. See a diagram, hear an explanation, better processing.
Makes sense. And activity theory. That one sounded a bit more complex.
It's a framework, really. Sees learning as a system. You've got the learner, the subject, interacting with materials, tools, their environment, the objects with a purpose to create something new, knowledge, skills, the artifact.
And the mobile device is a key tool in that system.
Exactly. It's an active part of how the learner interacts with their goal in that specific context.
Okay, and then there's cognitive load theory. That seems super relevant for small screens.
Hugely important for design. Our working memory, the bit that juggles information right now, is limited. Good design minimizes extraneous load, mental effort wasted on stuff that isn't the learning, like a confusing interface.
You want to maximize the germane load, the effort spent actually understanding the material.
Precisely. Connecting it to what you know. Designing for mobile forces you to be concise, clear, and avoid overloading that limited mental bandwidth.
Now here's something related to the learner that really jumped out from the sources, this idea of learning styles.
Ah, yes. The zombie concept, as one paper called it.
Zombie concept.
Yeah, because despite a real lack of solid research evidence, this idea that people learn best only visually or auditorily or kinesthetically, it just won't die. It persists.
And the sources suggested the danger isn't just that it's like not proven.
Right. The real insight, the potential harm, is that if learners believe they have a fixed style, they might actually put less effort into learning methods that fall outside that supposed preference.
Wow. So believing you're only a visual learner might make you tune out if something's presented auditorily.
It could. It might limit their flexibility and their learning opportunities. It's a really important caution against just accepting these intuitive ideas without checking the evidence.
That's fascinatingly counterintuitive, and it really underlines why understanding learner comfort, their actual tech experience, like in those nursing and teacher training studies, is so vital, rather than relying on assumptions.
Absolutely. So we've got the device, we've got the learner. The third leg of the frame stool is the social interaction aspect.
Right, how people connect and interact. And the sources kept saying learning is often collaborative, right? Negotiating meaning together.
Yeah, building on that social constructivist idea again, you can refine your understanding indirectly, like comparing your take on a text with what you think the author meant.
Or directly by actually talking, discussing, arguing with other people.
Exactly, through dialogue.
And this connects back to situated cognition, doesn't it? Learning in real contexts.
Yes, the idea that learning tasks should ideally be authentic, embedded in the context where the knowledge will be used. Mobile makes this so much more possible. Learning while doing in situ. And what you create through that learning could even be for a real community or audience.
The sources also mention some specific structured ways mobile tech supports social learning.
Yeah, things like learning communities, groups working together, maybe spread out geographically but connected by tech, and cognitive apprenticeships. Observing an expert, practicing, getting feedback, reflecting. Mobile can facilitate parts of that process.
And within that social side, the community of inquiry model came up, especially for online settings. Cognitive presence, social presence, teaching presence.
And the key bit there for mobile interaction is social presence. How well can people project themselves as real people, socially, emotionally, through the tech.
Which can be tough with just text, right? No body language, no tone of voice.
Exactly. It's a known challenge. But the research showed people get creative. They develop ways to compensate in text-based chats or forums, using emoticons, humor, teasing, self-disclosure.
Adding that human layer back in.
Precisely. Building rapport, group cohesion, it's work. And this social presence, the sources argue, is what makes it qualitatively different from just downloading a file. It's about interaction, questioning, engaging, being expressive, responsive.
Challenging but respectfully. Supportive.
All of that. That rich dialogue is vital for deep learning in a community, whether it's mobile or not. But it needs conscious effort when technology is the medium.
Okay, great. So we've got the frame model, device, learner, social. Now let's make it concrete. How did this stuff actually play out in the studies mentioned in the sources?
Okay, let's look at some examples. First, the NKI distance education project in Norway.
Right, they used mobile mainly as an add-on, didn't they, to their existing online courses?
Yeah. Students could download content to access offline, which was handy, and use mobile for communication, email, forums while on the move. Convenience for communication was a plus. But they definitely hit that snag with graphics on small screens, and they used SMS for quick practical info, like schedule changes.
Okay, in a totally different context, nursing practice education.
Yes. Nurses using PDAs, those early handhelds, right at the point of care, out in the community. This was all about just-in-time info.
Like drug references, lab values.
Exactly. Stuff they needed right then with the patient. Huge potential for improving patient teaching, too.
That's a perfect example of situated learning.
It really is. It also seemed to offer ways to communicate better with instructors. But they ran into barriers. Hospital rules, big concerns about patient confidentiality.
And connectivity again.
And connectivity. Those GPRS issues we talked about earlier. Reliable connection wasn't always there.
Okay, what about the informal learning study? That sounded interesting, people learning on their own terms.
Yeah, this looked at how folks with PDAs and smartphones were using them for deliberate learning, but outside any formal course. And what was fascinating was the creativity.
How so?
People were just naturally using the mobile features, the portability, the connectivity, the ability to share in really innovative ways for their own learning goals. Podcasting was starting, using audio notes, even GPS data.
And the insight was they were collaborating without labeling it as such.
Exactly. Sharing tips, asking questions on forums. They were learning together, often without thinking, oh, I'm collaborating now. It was just happening organically.
Cool. Then there's the museum multimedia tours. Classic use case.
Right. Handheld devices, pocket PCs in this case, delivering audio, video, graphics triggered by tags near exhibits, made the museum interactive without changing the building itself.
And they needed headphones, you said?
Yep, needed headphones for clear audio, showed the importance of peripherals. And an interesting finding was that while some liked the structured tour, others really wanted more freedom to just browse or search for things that caught their eye. Flexibility was key for some users.
Makes sense. What about the teacher training project? PDAs for teachers.
Yes, science teachers and trainees got PDAs. What got used most? Personal info management calendars, to-do lists, really useful for organization.
And just-in-time searching.
Big time. Using Google on the spot in the classroom or out in the field, also using the recording features, quick audio notes, photos, video clips for observation.
And they beamed notes to each other.
Yeah, using the infrared port. A quick way to share lesson observation notes right after. But the challenge was, the devices were often seen more as personal tools, less integrated into, say, reflective practices like blogging. That didn't really take off.
Okay, let's shift context again. The Mobile Gee project in South Africa, developing world focus.
Very insightful. Focused on basic, low-cost mobile phones. They built this prototype, a mobile audio Wikipedia. You could send an SMS request for an article.
And get an audio version back, read by text-to-speech.
Exactly. And you could even contribute your own audio recordings. Really smart for areas with maybe low literacy or limited internet, but strong mobile phone use and maybe a strong oral tradition.
Brilliant for access and contribution, but cost was still an issue.
Yeah, the network cost, sending SMS, using data. Even if the phone is cheap, the service cost can be a major barrier. That came through clearly.
And finally, the Distance Learning Program study in Southern Africa, SADC.
Similar context in some ways. Aiming to use mobiles to help students facing challenges like travel or power cuts. Again, high mobile phone ownership, but limited and expensive data.
So they were exploring audio, video, interactive stuff.
Right, and using SMS or MMS for tutoring support. A key goal was shifting students from just being receivers of information to being active contributors. but they stress mobile was part of a blend, not the whole solution.
Okay, so pulling all these examples together with the frame model, the sources paint a pretty clear picture, warts and all. Let's summarize the big challenges that kept coming up.
Well, the technical limitations, definitely. Screen size, typing on tiny keyboards, connectivity reliability, battery life. Even as tech gets better, these are still design constraints you have to deal with.
And cost. The cost of devices, yes, but maybe even more critically, the cost of data, of network access. That's huge in many parts of the world.
Absolutely. Then there's the pedagogical challenge. How do you actually design good learning experiences for mobile? It's not just shrinking desktop content. How do you blend it effectively with other teaching methods?
Finding that right blend seems key. And then there's the human element, teacher readiness.
Big one. Lack of IC key skills sometimes. Sticking to traditional methods, maybe just discomfort with new tech. The need for good training, support, and collaboration for educators came up repeatedly.
And it's not just teachers, but learners too, right? Learner readiness or comfort.
Yeah. Sometimes seeing the device as just personal, not for learning. Needing orientation, practice, and that whole learning styles thing, potentially impacting their willingness to engage.
Plus institution barriers, slow processes, lack of infrastructure, and privacy security, especially with sensitive data, like in the nursing study.
So yeah, lots of hurdles. But on the flip side, the opportunities highlighted are really compelling.
The big one has to be access, right? Learning anytime, anywhere. That's massive for mobile workers, remote learners, people dealing with unreliable infrastructure.
Totally transformative potential there. And delivering information just in time, right when and where you need it. Point of need support.
Mobile also seems great for communication and collaboration, building that sense of community even at a distance.
Definitely. And enabling that situated, contextualized learning, tying the learning directly to the real world around the learner.
Plus, using all the multimedia features, audio, video, photos, makes learning more engaging. It uses those different processing channels we talked about.
And it supports both formal learning, like course content, and that informal, self-directed stuff people do on their own.
Empowering learners to be creators, not just consumers of knowledge. That feels important.
Very. And just making use of those pockets of dead time commutes, waiting rooms, turning downtime into productive time.
And underlying all of this is the fact that the tech keeps getting better and cheaper, suggesting the potential for widespread adoption is huge.
So yeah, we've journeyed through these sources, looked at mobile learning through that frame lens device, learner, social context. We've seen concrete examples from all over.
And the takeaway isn't that mobile learning is some kind of magic fix, is it? It's more like a really powerful ingredient in a mix of approaches.
Exactly. It offers unique advantages tied to mobility, context, connectivity. But the research is clear. It can work really well if it's designed and implemented thoughtfully. You have to consider the device limitations, the learner's needs and backgrounds, and that crucial social dimension. It needs deliberate design, support, and integration.
Okay, so here's where it gets really provocative, I think. A final thought for you, the listener. Based on everything we've discussed from these sources, we know consumer mobile tech science, the phones, the apps, the platforms, evolves incredibly fast, often driven by what users do with it, their creativity, their demands.
Yeah, innovation often bubbles up from the users themselves.
So what does it mean for learning's future if the most cutting edge, the most innovative mobile learning stuff doesn't actually come from schools or universities who often have constraints, legacy systems, slower change, but comes from learners themselves?
Using the devices they already have, the platforms they already use.
Creating their own ways to learn, their own communities, completely on the fly. If that's where the real innovation happens, what role is left for traditional educators and institutions? How do they guide, support, maybe validate learning in that kind of world?
That's definitely something to chew on.